They're more like a phoenix. They were something at one point, and then it went away, and now they got to rise again.
But I thought they were busts. Today's show is about the guys the league once wrote off who are now very much central figures to the 2025 NFL story. The retread quarterbacks who are at the top of almost every statistical category that tells us who's playing well. And we have lots of questions about that. Like, how is that possible? How is it possible that quarterbacks who played as poorly as they did at the start of their career, to the degree that their teams that all invested high draft capital in them moved on, are now playing this well for other teams at older ages, 28 to 30 years old? We're going to be joined in just a bit by someone who knows the answers to these questions, I think probably better than most because he works with quarterbacks, including some of the aforementioned quarterbacks from the time that they're in high school all the way through present day in the NFL offseason. Jordan Palmer is our guest today on the SumerSports show. I'm Lindsay Rhodes with Sam Bruchhaus. Really excited to dive into this topic that feels like we've been one that we've been discussing for the last couple of years. Honestly, Sam Darnold, the breakout season in Minnesota comes to mind, doing it again in Seattle. This feels like a relatively new phenomenon, Sam. Is it?
I do. I think we have been talking about it for a couple of years, really starting with Geno Smith, who was a little bit older than some of the guys that we are seeing now, such as Sam Darnold. Baker Mayfield was really the second one. And it's really turned into its own kind of class of contract in the National Football League of these guys who are all comping their contracts around each other, who have been playing moderately well. I think it is a new phenomenon in National Football League to be testing the waters on these 26, 27, 28-year-old quarterbacks who started at a high value from the draft on their rookie contract, didn't work out, end up backing someone up or going to a really good situation or going to a really good environment, then getting a very small minimum level contract to start or be in the conversation somewhere else, succeeding, and then slotting into that Geno spot, that Baker spot, that Sam Darnold contract slot. That's a relatively new phenomenon. And as an exercise, Lindsay, I had you and our producer, Matt Stopsky, go through a list of quarterback seasons going back to 2012 to kind of figure out what this phenomenon really was. And I think the real difference in what is occurring now is the hunting for that value of the minimum contract. Because in the old days, you'd see the guys like Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers and these guys who were retread quarterbacks, but they had really proven themselves and then fallen off. We don't really see the guys who were extremely high value, then didn't play up to that high draft valuation, backups, kind of bottom of the league, then back into the middle or top of starting quarterbacks. We haven't really seen that until the last 5 to 6 years.
Let's be clear, since you brought this up, about what we're talking about here and who actually checks the box of a retread quarterback, because there are also journeyman quarterbacks, right? Who are longtime backups that move around and get in the game. We don't think that they qualify for this conversation. There are also quarterbacks who are at the end of careers that were very successful, who are in other places. We don't think they qualify as retread quarterbacks. How do you define, for purposes of the data that we'll get into in just a second, who is a retread quarterback?
I think the first item has to be that they were either brought in to be the starter or brought in to compete or brought in for some distinct reason, and thus were kind of nominated to be the starter. So I think Daniel Jones is a great example of this. Here's a guy who started and got a second contract with the team, but immediately upon that second contract was not considered up to snuff. There were discussions of whether he would get benched. The team was losing. He really never had metrics in the top 20 across his career. As a result, the team gives up on him and he goes to another place in order to compete. But the valuation of that was very, very low. And so you look at the same thing with Sam Darnold. He plays several years with the Jets. They give up on him. They give him to the Panthers for a pretty good draft valuation in terms of the trade. The Panthers give up on him. All of a sudden, he's a backup in the league for the San Francisco 49ers, but he's brought in to compete or at least be a bridge quarterback for the Vikings, and then he goes to the Seahawks on a pretty good deal as a result. That arc, that kind of high valuation, decline down into the dregs of the starters or into the backups, and then ascent back up, such as Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield also did, is what exactly we're trying to look for. We're not trying to look for guys who were Pro Bowlers and got injured, and we're not trying to look for guys who, were median level starters until they were 35 and then just got another job because someone needed a older bridge quarterback. We're looking for that distinct U-shaped curve here.
There is a sense of failure to live up to original expectations that is part of the component here, which, by the way, brings up an interesting name, and this might be getting into the weeds too much, and maybe this isn't necessary, about Gardner Minshew, like that type of quarterback who could qualify for this type of a conversation, but we decided to leave him out of the data because he was the 6th round pick. The expectations were low. He over exceeded, is that a word, expectations originally, and then kind of reverted back to a mean of what we probably should have expected from him originally. So I think what you pointed out about the high draft capital, we thought this guy was going to be great. It didn't work out. Now he's in a different place. And voila, what do you know? It's working out. I want to get more into that about whether it's working out. Like, what does the data tell us about these guys? Is there anything consistent that we know? It seems on the surface that they're playing very well. Does the data support that they're actually playing well?
So the data in terms of the sheer averages supports that these types of players play well, but there's a caveat. I'll give you the data first, Lindsay. Passing yards, you can expect them to be kind of in the middle or the low part of the league in a given season for passing yards, about 3,400 yards. You can expect them to have about just under a 70% completion percentage, 306 passing completions to 465 passing attempts. Their touchdown interception ratio is going to be around 2-1, so not ideal, not the top of the league, but it's something of interest. 21 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. And then where it really starts to tell a story, and this leads me to the second portion, is when you look at the amount of total passing expected points added that they end up putting together. That ends up being about 27. That's pretty solidly in the bottom of the league. So what those counting stats are showing is a little bit of selection bias.
Wait, I want to follow up on that. In terms of total EPA, which is what you just
Right.
referenced, all of these 3 guys are in the top 7 of the league at the moment.
Correct.
So how did you get the bottom of the league?
So I looked over the entire sample of guys who we looked at retreads.
Got it.
And these 3 players in particular are performing extremely well.
Got it.
So that leads us to the selection bias point of when a player plays well and they are on a really cheap deal, they tend to stay in the league and they tend to self-select for those good players. So when you look over the entire sample of these players, it includes those guys like Alex Smith, whose job was taken by Colin Kaepernick, but then played several years of Pro Bowl level play for the Chiefs. And it includes all these players that, were at the bottom of the league and then perform well for one season, kind of like we saw with Sam Darnold, and then continued to perform well. And so you gotta have kind of caveat, particularly for guys that we're just now seeing succeed, such as Daniel Jones, that if he doesn't play well for the rest of the season, we probably won't see him ever again as a quarterback. To where Sam Darnold, who's playing very well and played decently well last season, at least to the level of a median starter in terms of expected points added, will probably continue to play. And so that selection bias is a really key thing as we sit here at week 6 to consider in particular with Daniel Jones. And it's also very interesting to consider when you look at Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold, now that they've kind of gotten over the hump and we can kind of start to be more confident, in particular with Sam Darnold.
One of the things that you said there, I want to clarify. It seems to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, that what you're saying there, by highlighting the fact that they'll be in the middle to low part of the league in passing yards on average, that there is a picture that's being painted of a specific quarterback who is not being asked to carry the team, but is perhaps efficiently and sufficiently doing the things he is asked to do.
Correct. And I think that what this question brings about in terms of environment is what happens when one of these guys is just asked to play competent play for a team that needs to make the playoffs and has the basis to make the environment. But then that brings up all this entanglement stuff, Lindsay. Is it because this guy has progressed so far in his career and become a great mental and physical quarterback? Or is it because he's in a different environment? And I think that's a true question that I'm excited to ask Jordan about, because we as data scientists, or we just watching, don't really know what's happening behind the scenes. We don't know the progression of their arm or their mental. A couple episodes ago, we talked to Brian Hoyer, who said he wasn't even ready to be an NFL quarterback by year 3. That's not something we can necessarily pick up in the data just yet. And so it brings about this excellent data-based conversation of, we're seeing these guys who can kind of play to the level of a true NFL starter, but we don't know if it's because of their progression or if it's because they're on a better team.
Or if it is probably most likely some blend of both of those
Both.
things.
Right.
This feels like a good time to welcome Jordan Palmer into the conversation, former NFL quarterback who now trains some of your favorite quarterbacks in the league, in college, and who is also in the process of developing some of your future favorite quarterbacks at the high school level. He's the founder of QB Summit, co-founder of Thread Performance. Jordan, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I want to start here, and that is with the name for the group of quarterbacks that we talk about here. We call them retreads. It feels, and I don't even know if maybe it's not, and it's just me, it feels offensive. Like, is there a different what should we call this group of people? Is there a nicer way to bucket them?
Well, I'm not like in the media traditionally where I have to create a thumbnail and I have to name the episode something. So I'm in a little different landscape. But I think at the end of the day, when somebody gives a quarterback a little bit of money, they're investing in that position a little bit. When they give a quarterback a lot of money, they're investing in that position a lot. Okay. So if we look at them like what they are, which there are a lot of things, but they're investments, right, by the ownership group. Then if it look at it through the lens of an investment, then what they would be in the traditional investment world would be a distressed asset. And the reason that I like that kind of methodology is because um, I know some billionaire real estate people, and they make a lot of money finding the old crappy building that is abandoned and covered in graffiti in a part of town that should be better and should have a lot more going on and should be an expensive condo. And they buy up that street and they make it nice, and then they sell it for a bunch of money and they get a lot of return on their investment. And so I just think some of these quarterbacks, if we're talking Sam, Baker, Daniel, I know Gino's struggling right now, but Gino's been playing great for a couple of years now. There's a long list of them, and I can go back to some prior people. This is not the first time we've seen this. They're really distressed assets, and just because it hasn't worked doesn't mean it can't work somewhere else in its simplest form.
The fact that it is working somewhere else for so many of them, frankly, even though it's a small group, it feels relatively large. Is that a sign that their teams gave up on them too soon? That they should have stuck with them? Or would this not have happened in their original environments? What are we to make of this?
I think it would be a case by case basis if you said, should the team have gotten rid of him, yes or no? Because you can make a case, the Cleveland Browns, either way on that. Probably more towards they shouldn't have let him go. With the Jets, I mean, they didn't just let him go. They let him go and replaced him with Zach Wilson. So you will see if Zach Wilson is the next retread. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't think I think they let him go at the right time. I think it's more like, were they ready to have him? Were they ready to develop him? I posted something on Instagram yesterday when they announced that Brian Callahan was fired. And I just said, and boy, did I get, because I can go through and see who looked at my stories, and most of your famous quarterbacks check me out on my Instagram stories. They see who looked at it. But I've gotten more private comments on that post that I had yesterday, and I'm not like really a social media guy like that, from real people in the space, because I said, new rule: if you don't think you have the right head coach, then you're not allowed to draft a first round quarterback. New rule.
100.
I made the rule.
Absolutely.
If you think
Absolutely.
that Brian Callahan's not the guy, then you should not be allowed to use the number 1 overall pick on a quarterback. Take a tackle, take a pass rusher. Okay. Until you figure out that, because what we have seen is 4 quarterbacks in a row, drafted number 1 overall, brand new head coach, during the first year. is if you don't have the head coach right, if the company is not healthy, then don't add a high performing employee. And that's what it is. I'm in the business world, and I live in both worlds. And the parallels I see between business and the way the NFL teams run it, I think is unique because I don't know anybody else I've had over 300 employees between my two companies that I started. And I've been around the NFL since I was a kid. And I just see really poorly run companies. And the best way to tell it is what they do with their high pick quarterback. Now, it doesn't mean you should win a Super Bowl every year, but did he pan out? And I posted this too. I also said, I think there's the list of teams that have busted on developing quarterback is significantly longer than the list of just quarterbacks that were busts. And there definitely are some. There's some guys that fooled us and they should have never been drafted that high. That's fine. That's an isolated mistake. But the list of the busts, the majority of those people deserve to be on the list where the team did not develop them.
So using your allegory to the neighborhood that should be nicer, is the quickest way to make that neighborhood nicer adding a head coach? And why is the head coach so integral to that quarterback development at a young age?
I'm doing this live right now. It's a little off the cuff, but let's think about it. Okay. So when I played in Cincinnati, there was a part of downtown Cincinnati called Over the Rhine. Okay. And our team hotel on game day, you could cut through Over the Rhine to get to the stadium, or you could get on the freeway and go around. It's like 15 extra minutes. I was playing with my brother and we used to drive through Over the Rhine. Coach told us not to. I think it was like the number one murder capital in America, or like number two. It was a super dangerous, part of town, but it was right in downtown. And Over the Rhine today is beautiful. It's nice condos and great restaurants. Okay. I'm going to Cincinnati on a red eye tonight and I'll be there tomorrow. And I already know the breakfast spot I'm going to tomorrow because that's a real, what it is, whether you want to call it a regentrification or just a facelift on the community. Let's go through. Okay. So what'd they do? All right. So they had to make sure, first off, when they bought the stuff, they had to make sure it's like built to code. Okay. So they might have had to put some pipes in. They might have had to replumb. They might have had to, infrastructure, make sure the walls are stable. They had to pass code. Okay. I'm not a real estate guy, but I know that much. All right. So that would be like infrastructure, right? So then they had to make sure that they can attract businesses. You can't put a bunch of condos in if you don't have places for them to eat and shop and get their nails done and whatever. Okay. So you had to have kind of some teammates around them, right? You had to have like a reason. If you're going to sell expensive condos in Cincinnati and you're not going to have an ocean view, then you better have proximity to something. And so they got those tenants in there around it. And then they made it look really pretty and they made it really nice. And they built more infrastructure, but more cosmetics, made the buildings look nice. Okay. So flip that over to the quarterback thing. We need infrastructure. Do you have a head coach you like, or are you drafting a quarterback and your head coach is, whether he's externally or just internally, privately in meetings, on the hot seat? Is that where are we at on the infrastructure? Because if you don't pass code, you don't get to build a nice building. That's the way it works. And then what's around them? Do we have like a O-line? Not everybody has a great O-line, but like where are we at O-line wise? Where are we at pass catcher wise? Where are we at with the defense? Is this guy going to even be in a position to succeed? And then you get into one level deeper, like, is he have to start right away? Or do we have a nice veteran presence, a guy who can play, for a period of time? Do we have a bridge quarterback? Do we have a leader? Do we have somebody who's been around and done it? And then who's coaching them in the room? Do we have a former player? Do we have a guy that we're paying $300,000 to and this is his first job? Because you'd be shocked if I want to like do research on this. How many people drafted a quarterback in the first 2 rounds and their quarterback coach, this is his first job? The number's higher than people think. I don't have it in my head, but it's higher than you'd think.
Okay. So without giving any specific, there are anecdotes that you can think of right now off the top of your head. Like, yes, this is something that happens.
100%. 100%.
With a rookie quarterback that's drafted high.
Yes.
Someone who's
100%.
never done it.
Yes.
Showing them the way.
All the time. And on top of that, I now look at it from an investment. Okay, I'm going to pay this quarterback $50 million. Okay, high pick. And I'm going to pay the quarterback coach $300,000. Who works for who? And that's the investment that we've put. That's me buying a $4 million house and going cheap as possible on everything. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't need a gardener. I'll just do it myself. I'm like, I'll just fix the plumbing myself. I'll just like, it's cheaper if I just, right? We don't do that with a $4 million house. No, you have to spend money to upkeep and to keep it a $4 million house. I see this all the time. How about then you pay a guy a second contract? That guy now makes $55 million a year and the quarterback coach makes $300,000 or $400,000. who works for who. And this is just this is not an indictment on one team. This is a systemic problem that I see, and with certain organizations right now, I'm hoping to solve.
It's really interesting because what you're describing exactly from a data perspective, I'm a data scientist, is called the loser's curse. And so these people who have been losers as a result go make these mistakes. They hire a coach who doesn't know what they're doing, a first-time quarterback coach on a first-time staff, and all this stuff like that. From the player development perspective, what is able to be developed once you overcome that loser's curse? So we've seen Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. What has been added to their game over the years in excess of, that baseline not necessarily being good? What has gotten them to that level from a personal perspective without regard to the environment?
No hesitation, it's resiliency. Because you have to be able, if you're going to be on track to be a bust and then be the retread, your word, not mine. Okay. If you're going to do that, if that's the equation, get drafted high, then suck, then get good. Okay. If that's what you're going to do. Okay. Well, that period of sucking, you have to be resilient. And you don't have to be 6'4", and you don't have to have a rocket arm, and you don't have to run a 4.5. You have to be resilient. In fact, if you're those three things and not resilient, then you are a bust. And it's the resiliency. Now, some cases I'm very involved and I know a lot about what happened at the low time. Sam Darnold's an example. I've been with him since he was like 15 years old. Like, I know a lot about the seeing ghosts, he got mono, and just the way that social media reacted to him getting mono as like a 22-year-old in New York, and like just drug through the mud. Um, you have to be resilient. And Baker Mayfield, right? The self-confidence that guy had, like, he had to be resilient. Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold are similar personalities. Baker Mayfield would be the opposite, the other side of the spectrum. So it's not a commonality in personality. It's all three of these guys have been incredibly resilient to be able to get through that part, and not just get through the part where you're not playing well, get through the part where you're not playing well and continue to improve, even though the internet and the NFL media doesn't see it and is going to continue to point out your flaws. You have to be resilient. Now, there's some work ethic, there's some toughness, there's some coaching, there's some journey. It's a sum of a lot of things. But I think the key ingredient, if you want to go from drafted high, bust, to retread, big money guy, 100 mil, all that, the resiliency is the common denominator, and it's the ingredient that you need the most. And if anybody right now is coming off that, like Zach Wilson, anybody in that group right there, I would just point to that and I go, if you don't have this, this is never going to work. If you have it, you got a shot.
Do they also develop in other ways? Are there any theme? I mean, clearly they do, but are there any themes with regards to the ways that you see them develop over time?
Yeah, I think learning good football is the most underrated thing. Being in a room, I, I, there's no way to score this. I don't have any data. I just know that Sam Darnold took a step in his career backing up Brock Purdy for 20 games and being in a room with Kyle Shanahan and Brian Greasy and whoever else was in that room. I know he got better. Um, a different way of thinking about it, a different way of, there's not that many plays. Okay. There's a lot of plays. If you're a fan and you look at it and I show you a call sheet, you go, oh my God, there's a million plays. If you've been around the league like I have, like, everyone has a lot of plays, but at the end of the day, 5 people have to block. There's only 5 eligible receivers and there's 1 quarterback. There's only so many things we can do here. So being able to see it and hear it explained differently. The reason this guy's going to go outside to leverage and cross face is going to do this to the defender, and those are things you file away. And if you're a learner, a competitive learner, like those 3 guys that we mentioned are, where they want to get better simply because they can, not because they have to or because someone told them to. They want to get better because they can. Then you have an opportunity to take a step. So even though Baker Mayfield was famously in LA for whatever, a couple weeks, I'm sure he would, outside of the media, behind closed doors, I would assume he would probably point to something that he gained from that experience, not on the game field, in the practice field, the way that they prepare, the way they install this, the way they go about it. You heard Daniel Jones the other day talk about last year sitting behind, not even as the 2, sitting behind, just being in the room with Sam Darnold and Kevin O'Connell and Josh McCown. He, in a press conference the other day, he gave credit to those 3 guys. The way he approved, I was in New York and then I went to Minnesota and I was like, wow, this is how they do it. So that's a thing he took from the Minnesota Vikings without ever playing a snap. And I think that's really, really common. Geno Smith's another one who just kind of backed up for a long time. Well, that'd be an interesting interview to hear. What did you take from that experience? What did you add to your game from that? But the developmental piece of this, outside of the mechanics, footwork, accuracy, all those things, just being around, being exposed to different versions of football and higher levels of football. Maybe it's explained better. Maybe it's explained the right way for the first time. I played in 7 teams, and there's a, flat sail and then a dig and a check down backside. Like that's in 678 hook flat, dagger sail, whatever you want to call it. It's called different things, all that stuff. I've read that as a pure progression, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've read that away from the safety, so away from rotation, cover 2 over here, quarters over there. Like I've read that a bunch of different ways. Not because I wanted to, but because each team I played on, for the most part, had a different way of reading the exact same play that I think like Marino and Boomer Esiason used to run.
There's also something that strikes me about those conversations in those rooms that you're describing that is just inherently different, that is probably also tied to the loser's curse situation that Sam was talking about. When you're in a room where it's not on fire, you have space to have a next level conversation and really get into the weeds about something that is a wrinkle that will make it even better. If everything is bad, then you gotta talk about, like, the basics, right? Like, it's a luxury almost even just to be in that space, in addition to the minds of the coaches that you have access to. It feels like it's twofold.
And when you're there with the same system for multiple years, that's the part I think fans say, like, well, they keep changing his coordinator and he's had 5 coordinators in 6 years. And so they'll give credit to the fact that that's difficult without an understanding of how difficult it is. And not difficult because you have to learn a new offense. That's work. You're getting paid lots of money. You have to study. You need to work. I'm fine with that. If you're going to pay somebody $20 million and ask them to learn a bunch of new stuff, I think that's a good deal. Shut up and do it. But what you don't get to do when you have a new offense every year is get to the next level that you're talking about, Lindsay. Like you don't get to that next level. All right. So Lindsay, you and I have talked a lot about parenting. Okay. So I have 4 kids. Okay. I have 9, 7, almost 3, and 1. Okay. The amount of time that my wife and I spent when it was just my son, learning about things, what to eat, learning the hard way because we did something wrong, or doing some research, or sharing a meme that we saw of a smart way to do something. Like the amount of time that I put in to figuring out how to dad and figuring it out with my first kid versus my fourth kid, it's like I don't know how to score it, but it's like 100 to 1. Right?
Yeah.
It's something like that, right? It's not twice as much. It's like 100 times more. And so with my fourth kid, only because experience, not because I'm talented and not because of how good or bad of a dad I am, just straight up off of experience, right? The way you would react to the sound of a baby choking when it's your first baby versus your fourth baby, like I know that sound. He's good. You know what I mean? Or don't let him touch this and don't let him do that. And don't let my 1-year-old daughter, she's got marker, mud, and chocolate on her face at all times because I know she's fine. And so the same thing when you get year 2 in an offense, year 3, year 4 in an offense. It's not that you get to put in more plays. Like you only got 100 in the beginning and now you get 150. It's not that. It's the level to which we can talk about how to do this and the footwork and the detail. And now we added this play action in off of that. And so that's going to allow us to do that. You don't get to do that when your whole offseason is spent teaching the new language, memorizing formations, memorizing footwork, memorizing what this is called. You don't get to do that. And so back to my social media post where I said, if you don't know if you have the right head coach, you're not allowed to draft a first round quarterback. If you don't, like, I think you should, if you draft a quarterback, this would never happen, but like, you're not allowed to fire the coordinator for 3 years. For us to evaluate a quarterback, I want to see him. It doesn't have to have a perfect O-line and amazing receivers. I just want to see him do the same thing 2 or 3 years in a row before I draw a conclusion on whether or not we give this guy a big contract.
100%. And just, I know you want to jump in, Sam. I just want to reiterate what that does then, if this is a rule, which it wouldn't be a rule, is for all the Titans fans that are like, but he deserved to go. Like, okay, then this forces you to look at the situation more harshly before you draft the quarterback, if this is going to be the
Yeah.
case. Now you're married to this. Are you sure you want to be married to this? Make that decision now. Don't like let it ride and then maybe waste a year.
Well, there's this element both from the organizational perspective and from what you've described, Jordan, of almost like control what you can control, kind of at the hardest element. And you have to kind of shed off all those other things in order to get there. Does that make sense to you, or is it something different?
Yeah, I use this analogy when I have quarterbacks in my office. So my business is called QB Summit, right? Some of the best players of each level. But let's say my business was called Golf Summit, okay? And I'm the best golf coach in the game, and you're one of the top young golfers, okay? So I use this analogy all the time. I go, all right, let's say we got a big match this Saturday, state championship, national championship, or PGA Tour event, whatever, okay? What are some things that you can't control? Okay. Let's say it's the Masters. Okay. All right. So I can't control the level at which my competition plays. The guy I'm playing against plays out of his mind, unstoppable, has the round of his life. I can't control that. Okay. Bogeys the first 5 holes, and all I got to do is just play today and I win. I can't control that. Okay. So I can't control my competition level. I can't control the weather. Okay. As it rains outside right now in Southern California. And I can't control the course conditions. Okay. The greens are super fast. The rough is super thick, whatever. Okay. That's kind of it though. That's the whole list. Like you say, your equipment, it's like, no, if you're one of the top golfers, you have great equipment. It's actually fit perfectly for you. And there's somebody out there in the parking lot ready to fix it. So it's just those 3 things. All right. But this is QB Summit. Big game this weekend. I've got a client that I am very high on right now in college that I think is going to be a household name here soon. Damon Williams Jr. from Washington. He's at the big house this weekend, his coming out party. And with him, what can Damon not control this weekend? Okay. He can't control his competition. He can't control the field conditions, and he can't control the weather. But what else? I mean, does his O-line block? Did the receivers catch the ball? Does the defense catch anybody? How are they calling it this game? How's the play calling been? How was the clock management? Did we burn 3 timeouts in the first half? Like, the list of things that we can't control is long, which is why it's the most difficult position in sports. And it's the ultimate team sports. All those cliche lines that we hear and we say and we repeat, that's why it's true. It's the list that a quarterback has of things that he cannot control is significantly longer than that of a pitcher on a Major League Baseball team.
So with that in mind, in particular with your young quarterbacks, what do you tell them that they can control, and how do you improve them at controlling those things?
I have them literally build a list of things this weekend that they can control and highlight it and try and challenge them to pour 100% of their mind share into those things. So I have this presentation I give called 2 buckets. So there's a bucket of things we can control, and there's a bucket of things we cannot control. Okay. And both buckets in this one slide are like the same size. Okay. But once I go through the analogy that I just gave, which is like the list of things you can't control is longer, the next slide has a giant bucket that says can't control and a tiny little bucket that says can control. Because that's really what it is. There's 2 buckets, but one of them is like a dumpster and the other one is like a Dixie cup. And so how do we challenge ourselves on a weekly basis? Everyone wants to take it one game at a time. Everybody says that. It's really difficult to do. How do you put all of your mind share, effort, and energy into the things that you can control and not even allow yourself to focus on the things that you can't? And so it's some deeper stuff. It's neutral thinking. There's a process. There's a little bit of performance psychology, what I do with my clients. But that's an exercise that guys go through, and I get 100% results on it. And guys go, man, that makes a lot of sense. That allows you to be unemotional about a thing that makes you really angry or really mad or really upset. Because if it's in the bucket of stuff that I can't control, why am I even giving it that energy? And the word percent means out of 100. There is no 110%. So at the end of the day, I draw a circle. I draw a circle and I build a pie chart. And I go, be honest with yourself. In the last 5 days, how much time have you spent on things that you actually don't have control over? And people are usually shocked to find out that they actually, if they're being honest, they put a lot more time and effort, whether they're talking to their family about it, complaining to a teammate in the locker room, praying about it nonstop. They're giving it energy and they actually have no control over the outcome anyways. So at the end of the day, it just feels like a bad investment.
That's such good advice. I love how much, by the way, you have talked about in terms of resiliency. You're talking about controlling like your own thoughts and the way that you're approaching it. There's so much mental that is sort of the key here, as opposed to like physically developing, which also makes sense that you're talking about with regards to the subject that we're talking about here today. Like these quarterbacks are getting older. Like they are less athletic as they get older and older again, and yet they're experiencing success in a way that they haven't before. And it's clearly because they figured out a lot of the stuff that's going on up here. With regards to younger quarterbacks who are in the league, so in addition to doing all of the things that you're talking about, if they're in a bad situation, one of the things that you said stood out to me: who works for who, right? Like they're getting paid a lot of money. What would you advise them to do to take control of the situation? What control do they have of this situation? Because you also don't want to come in, be a rookie quarterback, be like, hey, I'm getting paid the most money here because I was a high draft pick. And so listen to me when I clearly there are things I need to learn. But also, my career is at stake here based on your actions. Like, what is the right dance there for a young quarterback in that situation?
That's a great question. I think this is my own personal opinion. I don't, this is my subjective opinion, but I think it's case by case basis. I mean, on one end of the spectrum, you have Josh Allen, who I don't know, has a very unique relationship with Brandon being the GM. I mean, they're buddies, you know. I was with Brandon at Josh's wedding, you know what I mean? And I think Patrick and Veach have a great relationship. I think that I don't know, but there's conversations early on about how do we make this place better, right? And then I'm the little brother of the guy that demanded a trade to get out and was willing to retire because that was a one-way dialogue. There was no input. And so, and everything in between. And so I think it's case by case basis. So I don't know what Bryce Young can tell David Tepper, or if he can get a meeting with David Tepper, or if him and David Tepper are grabbing coffee all the time and talking about it. So I think it's a case by case basis of the access that the ownership group and the front office gives to that player. Also, I think the agents, this is where, like, this is one of the places where having a really, really talented, really experienced agent's really helpful, is helping massage. I think agents do this a lot more than fans realize. Make the situation better. I've got a friend who's an agent who's representing a starting quarterback who also represents another player who, like, that trade could go down. So he's going to end up help both of his clients because this player could really benefit from this player getting traded over there, and it gets him out of that bad situation. And these guys are on a heater. And so, like, that's really common. And so I think also the relationship that the agent has with the decision makers, whether that's the owner or the front office, and not every agent has that, by the way. I mean, there's just certain people that are trusted, and there's certain teams that are more open to those conversations, and there's certain agents who've built up equity with some of these teams to be able to help that. I've just seen agents. I've had a lot of conversations with the player about something like this, and the agent's typically involved. And in a lot of cases, I go, "Wow, that agent really pulled that off. That was actually a really good move." Or, "Gosh, I wish your agent could even, like, had any juice here that would be helpful."
So talking about those things and then also like the things you can control, it seems like you have a detailed process of evaluating these players when you are directly working with them. If we wanted to, if we were close enough, obviously we can't get all the data, but we're about quantifying stuff here at SumerSports. What would be the checklist of stuff that you would want to see of a guy who has gone through a tough time, is now at the bottom, and you're starting to see trend in the right direction? What's that checklist look like in terms of their day-to-day preparation, in terms of the stuff around them, or in terms of their physical development?
All right, so here's the do not pass go, right? I've talked a lot, Lindsay, you and I have talked about confidence being the most important trait in a quarterback. There's one that I can't say it's more important than confidence, but I can say it is a yes, no, inability to develop this. And it's not what you think. We could sit here and I could have fun and I go give you guys 10 guesses and you'll go 0 for 10 on this. Okay, I'm looking for a book by a friend of mine, Dr. Mike Gervais, who I'm going to butcher the exact name of it, but it has to do with the fear of other people's opinions. And we all know what FOMO is, fear of missing out, right? Your buddies all went on a trip and you couldn't go, and you're like, oh, I wish I was there. I teach a lot of FOPO, fear of other people's opinions. And this is a yes, no. And if you're a no on this, like you do care too much what other people think, if you're in high school, I can help you. If you're in college, maybe. If you're in the NFL, I can't help you. And I think if you took a 5-star junior high schooler and junior, 5-star, 30 offers, Elite 11 finalists, going places. Okay. And we've been around this thing forever. And I could give that player one trait. Okay? I could like, it's create a player like NBA Jam. I could, like, make him 6'6". I could make him run a 4.43 40. I could make him the smartest processor of all time. The number one trait I would get him is the ability to not give a shit what anybody thinks. Because in 2025 and 2026 next year, 27 the next year, The scrutiny is not, um, it's not potential that it might happen. It's a 100% guaranteed you will have haters. And the worse you get, like the bigger your star becomes and the more notoriety you get and the worse you play, the more they're going to be. But the more you win, the more there's going to be. There's a giant group of people who can't stand Patrick Mahomes. Can't stand him. Thinks he's overrated. Like, you think Patrick Mahomes is overrated? What are you talking about? This guy's like doing stuff we've never seen anybody do before. Okay. At the end, the amount of people who can't stand Tom Brady and you're just so sick of him, and I can't stand his hair, and he can't even move anyway. And it is absolutely a guaranteed going to happen. You better learn how to deal with it early because it's too late in college to figure that out. And so it's the ability to not care what anybody thinks. And so it's this concept. I teach this. It's a process of the fear of other people's opinions. I have a presentation on it. I dive deep on it. I prescribe the book. I prescribe pieces of the book to certain clients. But that's a thing you have to have. And so when you have somebody, and it doesn't show up in one place, it's not just what they wear. It's not just how they celebrate. It's not just how they interview. Those are things where I can kind of, I've got an opinion on some people I've never met before based off of everything that I've seen. Am I right? I don't know. Do I think I'm right? Yeah, I do think I'm right. And it comes down to the end of the day is your ability to block that out. And the way that Baker Mayfield has blocked that out, I would assume is like I'm going to use the haters as fuel. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to be better because of all these haters, and I'm going to talk trash back to them. But I think I know the way that Sam Darnold, and I would assume the way that Daniel Jones has handled it is, I don't care. Like, what does that have to do with it? Like, I don't care. Like, I'm gonna focus on me. I'm gonna get better. Either way, the outcome is the same with two different approaches. If I'm right, and those are the two approaches. But at the end of the day, it has to be the same process, which is your ability to not block it out, not delete Twitter off your phone, but your ability to genuinely, in your heart of hearts, not really care what anybody thinks. And it's really hard to do. And most of the people watching this right now, if they're really being honest with themselves, would be bad at it too.
Have you been bad at it in the past? By the way, the book is The First Rule of Mastery. Stop worrying about what people think of you.
There'll be people who watch this who watched Carson and I play who will not believe what I'm about to say, but it's the main difference between my brother and I. My whole career, I was worried about what everybody thought. I grew up in this shadow. I'm in high school. He's 4.5 years older than me. It was a big deal. I went to Mission Viejo High School. We were the best team in the state, maybe the country. My brother was at USC. And then I got one offer. I only played my senior year in high school. I get one offer to the only school I didn't want to go to, UTEP. And I land and I redshirt and I sit out that year and my brother wins the Heisman and goes number one. The expectations were so unrealistic for me when I took over as a redshirt freshman to start my second year ever at quarterback. I literally was a backup from third grade to my junior year. And I didn't handle that very well. And I was so confused as a young man. And then I went through and then I had a great college career and we won a bunch of games and touchdowns and all the stuff. And I get to the league and every interview I had, every single thing. And some guys really poked at me. Kyle Shanahan was the quarterback coach for the Houston Texans. And our meeting did not go well because of how he called me out as not being as good as my brother or whatever the line was. And I don't even fault him for it. We like joke about it. But like, that's what my meetings were. And so then it just was like a spotlight on that. And then I get to the league. I play terrible. I get cut right away. I was a 6th-round pick by Joe Gibbs. I get cut. I'm out. Now I'm really searching. I back him up for 3 or 4 years. And that subsided. And then I met a performance psychologist named Trevor Moad, rest in peace. He's one of my best friends, died a few years ago, who wrote a book, but taught neutral thinking. And I learned how to do this after my 4th year in the league. And then I go on and play on other teams. And for the first time in my life, I was a backup. And every time I was a backup, whether I was backing up Jay Cutler or Blaine Gabbert or any of these guys, I, in my mind, thought I was better than that guy. You put me in, I'm never coming out again. And I'd never thought that way. And I didn't realize how powerful, how you talk to yourself, how you think about things, how you perceive and bring in other people's opinions and what that does to you. And that was like early social media days. It'd be way worse now. Twitter was like brand new when I got to Cincy. And so the ability to do that is bigger. But honestly, my brother threw it better than me and he was faster. And there's a bunch of like a long list of things he was better at than me. But we're literally the same size and had the same coaching and had the same everything. The biggest difference, and my brother still to this day, almost to a fault, could care less what anybody thinks. And I can't even compliment him on it because I don't think he did anything to do it. I think it's he's always been. He could care less what anybody thinks. That's why when he demanded a trade in Cincinnati and got drugged in the mud and everyone, he never made a comment. He never had to go at a press conference. He never had his PR team release a statement. He just didn't care what you guys were saying.
Oh, I'm so jealous of that,
You
the
are.
ability.
This guy has
I
like multiple beautiful homes. You're jealous. Jeez, I'm at work right now.
I have one last question, and, if you don't want to put a name to it, that's totally fine,
Yeah, I
but
don't
I'm
want to put
trying I'm looking toward the future with regard to the theme of the episode, which is these quarterbacks who don't succeed in their first stop. Are there any that you can see that if they ended up not succeeding for the duration of where they are right now, that you think have the checklist to say, if they went to the right place, this guy would hit? Like, this guy has what Sam Darnold has, the ability to make the best of a certain situation.
I got one for you. Okay. And a bunch of people are going to hear me say this and they're going to go, oh, never mind. I thought that guy was smart for a minute. Now I don't. But I'm going to be right on this thing. Will Levis is going to be, he's going to be better. He's going to play at a high level. Now he's out here for 5 months with me right now. But I'm watching what he's doing, how he's applying himself, what he's studying right now, what he's working on while he's rehabbing the shoulder. And it's a very, it's a thing. It's a thing. You rehab your right shoulder and you throw it through right arm. It's a thing. But this will be a guy that comes back and everyone will be pleasantly surprised at the level that he plays at. And I will be logging this episode and excited to replay it whenever that time comes.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't
That
speak
was
to what you
excellent.
see
I'm glad
behind the scenes, but it checks all of the boxes. It
Yeah.
checks a quarterback who was never really in a good situation. You and I have talked about this for years. I always, to the point where it got, like, uncomfortable, every year was having conversations with people who would call Sam Darnold a bust, and I was like, "We don't know that." And they were like, "We know it now." And I was like, "Well, let's just wait and see, like, better environment," right? And then a year goes by, and then you're like, "Well, it still wasn't a good environment, though. I'm still not ready." So the
Well, think
all
about
of the
Will, right? Well,
yeah,
how can he not be good? He's got Joe Burrow's offensive coordinator. Okay, they fired him.
yeah.
Like he's throwing to DeAndre Hopkins. How are you not good?
Well,
DeAndre Hopkins at this point in his career is not playing for the Ravens.
yeah.
He's got 4 catches through 6 games. You know what I mean? Okay, and so you'd be like,
Yep.
they trade AJ Brown right before he gets there. Like that turned out to be a bad one, right? And so like, you know what I mean? Like at the time in the moment, yeah, and he Will Levis and he did the play and everyone laughed at it, and it's like I can pull up clips of Brady doing dumb stuff. I can pull up clips of Patrick Mahomes doing dumb stuff. Like that's not a lot happened in a short amount of time, but like, was he set up for success? No. And he wasn't the number 1 pick. He's a 2nd round pick. Right. And so like, yeah, he's put in that situation that his first game of his career, it was like kind of the worst thing that happened to him. He came in and threw 4 touchdowns. First start, no picks, 4 touchdowns, big home win. Right. And that can be like going to Vegas for the first time and winning a bunch of money and going, oh, gambling's easy. Right. And then you go back and you give it all back. And so, yeah, I think Will be that guy. And whatever, I don't know what's going to happen team wise and all that stuff, but I'm watching him right now do it, and helping kind of script how do we maximize? You're already going to do your rehab. You're going to bust your ass doing rehab. Everybody does. But like, how do you take a major step in every physical, mental, emotional? And every year I usually have a hurt guy out here. And yeah, we're doing some football stuff. We're doing some other stuff too. And I am bullish and really excited to see, it's not, these guys aren't, when they're doing this, what we're talking about is they're not a butterfly, right? They're not coming out of the cocoon and blossoming. They're more like a phoenix. They were something at one point, and then it went away, and now they got to rise again. And so I don't like retread. I like Phoenix. So Will Levis is my next Phoenix.
We've come up with so many better phrases for this. So that alone has been wonderful. I feel like you've given every level of athlete so many things to think about. There are things that you've said here that I want to turn around and have my son, who's 11, listen to about mental fortitude. So thank you so much for your time, Jordan. I really, really appreciate your perspective on this.
My pleasure. You're the best.
Sam, that was so fun. It's like one of my favorite conversations that we've had. He is so good at explaining things in a fun way that are also substantive, that are, like, I don't know. I think he's a great guest.
Yeah, and I think it would have been easy for Jordan to come on here and, like, talk about footwork and arm angles and the stuff that he works with guys on a daily basis, but it's clear to me that environment, infrastructure, and mentality have such an outsized importance among the quarterback position, and that's why, we struggle to quantify some of this, and I think
Yes.
I kept asking the questions about the checklist and the process, and he answered them so eloquently because as a coach, like, that's literally his job. And because, like, how can we better quantify this? Like, there are psychological studies out there that talk about, are you overly concerned with other people's opinions? I would love to implement those for the draft. Like, it was getting the data scientist brain going because there's so many key checklist items, and the way he broke it down, it's like a binary thing for a quarterback, and
Yeah.
this, that, and the third was such a good process and checklist for a coach who is, being paid by these people and working with these people that he wants to see succeed. And so it was really cool to see his process behind the more hard to quantify things. You think about someone like Jameis Winston, for example, and why he's been able to continue to get these jobs where he's kind of on the fringe of starting, but it never seems like it gets him down. It's so clear that,
He gets
people
0.
yeah, people saying that he's goofy or loving him and saying he's the best teammate, or when he was a Saint, Dennis Allen going out there and saying that Jameis did something by himself and that wasn't my call and kinda hanging him out to dry. Uh, it's just not gonna affect him. He's gonna be Jameis and he's gonna go play, and I think that's why even as, people don't necessarily wanna see him throw 30 touchdowns or 30 interceptions as a starter again, that's why he continues to stick in these good roles, as a backup because he has that ability. And even from the highest level, which obviously, like, we can oversample the highest level all we want, but it's cool to see that amongst, like, backups as well as a true yes or no binary. An NFL quarterback has to have this.
There was one thing that I wanted to ask him about that felt a little bit too football-y at the end to
Mhm.
go back to, but, I'm curious to just flush out with you, and that was the specific narrative that was attached to Sam Darnold for so long
Yeah.
about the fact that he folded under pressure,
Right.
literally and figuratively, right? Like, you were in a moment where, like, you have to come through, interception immediately, or like there's literal pressure from the defense, and he struggled with that. It's so interesting to me that he specifically has not struggled in those areas. And I know that people are going to point to examples of interceptions late in games, but statistically, when you go through the numbers, Sam Darnold, well, and also Daniel Jones and Baker Mayfield, they're all top 5 versus pressure. Sam Darnold is number 3 in EPA per play against pressure, literally physical pressure in this case. When trailing, he has the number 1 EPA per play in the league, the number 1 success rate, the number 1 completion percentage, and the number 1 yards per attempt. It's massively high, 11.88. So I kind of feel like there's non-garbage time. He's top 5 in all of those categories. Like, I wonder if that is also the physical manifestation in the numbers of developing the mental stuff
Yeah.
that he talked about.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because you consider his discussion of the environment and the ability to thrive, and maybe that truly was a weakness, but he gets to Kevin O'Connell, and Clint Kubiak, 2 extremely experienced head coaches and play callers who are going to ensure via pre-snap motion or via the screen game or via shifts that their quarterback kind of has all the answers. And so when you consider that, for all the chagrin about, Clint Kubiak's rush rate over expected, when you consider that their offense is designed to give the quarterback the answers, maybe that's all it took for him to start seeing the success that he's seen in a small sample this year.
This has been a fun investigation, as they all are. I invite you, as I always do at the end of every episode, to go check out all of these data points that we're talking about ourselves at SumerSports.com. A lot of them are public. All of them are public in a different way. If you want to go to SumerBrain, that's SumerSports.com/SumerBrain. Type in whatever question you want to know more information about. As we said last week, it's best right now. It's an open beta period, so it's not perfect. We want your help to try and make it be more perfect, actually, right now. But it's best as a data retrieval tool. So again, same, you've done a great job putting out a lot of videos trying to help people with their prompts.
Mhm.
What is the number one piece of advice that you would give people in terms of the prompts that will help you most successfully get the right answers?
I think that the number one piece of advice is if you want something extremely specific. On this podcast, for example, we've talked about pressure rates or time under pressure. Just make sure that you are specific in what you're asking. So the way that I would structure a question about Sam Darnold under pressure would be, you know that pressure only happens on dropbacks, and so you'd say on dropbacks in which Sam Darnold faced pressure from the defense, that'll keep it to the defense rather than all this other stuff. Uh, what
Other
was
stuff
his
in this situation being like the offense also has a pressure stat, right? Like the offensive
Correct,
line gives up pressure. Like, let's not
exactly.
confuse this. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a
and so
good
you
point.
wanna limit it to the defense,
Mhm.
and then you wanna ask for his yardage on those dropbacks as expressed to his passing attempts. Like, you wanna be as specific as possible because you wanna include sacks. So, to kinda give the conclusion here, I would ask, on dropbacks in which Sam Darnold was pressured, what was his expected points added on average? And that's going to be a very clear and succinct and specific prompt that will give you exactly what you want. And I
Weeks
think
1
just
through 6 of 2025.
exactly, Lindsay, and that'll give you exactly what you want, and moreover, it gets you in that thought process of, like, really deeply thinking about these players, and I've had a lot of fun, particularly as we've been demoing some of our live products, which you can go check out, on SumerSports. At SumerSports, we had a kind of a live demo, tell us what you think. If you have some feedback, we can try to build that in as, we move towards greater versions of Sumer Brain, but I was having a blast talking about, like, time to throw with Caleb Williams and the differences between the scripted drive, the first 15 plays and the second half. And you're able to get deep in those insights. And I'm be honest, sometimes I'm like looking up and I'm like, wait, no, I need to watch the game and
Yeah.
then the drive ends and then ask the question instead of just getting all excited doing it right then. So it's been
Welcome
fun.
to my ADHD life, watching football in general. I'll go through like stretches where I'm like, oh, wait, I'm watching the conversation down here. I need to look up and watch the football. Good stuff. We're back next week with another episode of the Sumer Sports Show. For Sam, I'm Lindsay. Thanks for being with us.